Every year, tens of thousands of people die from opioid-related overdoses. And while the opioid crisis didn't start with fentanyl, fentanyl is now the drug that defines it. And here's the unsettling part. The same receptor system that allows doctors to relieve something like severe cancer pain is the same system that, when overstimulated, can shut down breathing in minutes. In the early 2000s, prescription opioids like oxycodone were at the center of the crisis. Later, heroin became more prominent. But over the past decade, fentanyl, a fully synthetic opioid, has overtaken both. Part of what makes fentanyl so dangerous is not just how powerful it is, but how often people don't even realize they're taking it. Counterfeit pills made to look like Xanax or Adderall can contain fentanyl. Someone may believe they're taking a familiar medication when in reality they're being exposed to a substance that is roughly 50 times more powerful than heroin and up to 100 times more powerful than morphine. In opioid-naive individuals, just a few milligrams can be enough to cause a fatal overdose. So in this video, we're going to look at fentanyl from an anatomical and physiological perspective. We'll talk about why the body even has opioid receptors in the first place, how opioids change the way pain is processed, why fentanyl is so effective and so dangerous, and what actually happens during overdose and withdrawal. It's going to be an important one, so let's do this. First, let's clear up an important distinction: opiate versus opioids. Opiates are natural compounds derived from the poppy plant. Morphine and codeine are classic examples. Opioid is a broader term. It refers to any substance that binds to and activates opioid receptors in the body. That includes natural opiates, semi-synthetic drugs like heroin, and fully synthetic drugs like fentanyl. Fentanyl is not derived from the poppy plant. It is manufactured entirely in a lab. But once inside the body, it acts on the same receptor system. And that receptor system exists for a reason. Your body produces its own opioid molecules. These are called endogenous opioids, and you've likely heard of one before: endorphins. The term literally means endogenous morphine, but there are other endogenous opioids like enkephalins, dynorphins, and more. These molecules bind to opioid receptors throughout the nervous system and help regulate pain, stress, reward, and survival responses. Opioid drugs work because they bind to these receptors that already exist, and in many cases exert a much more powerful effect than the endogenous opioids. Now again, one of the main functions of this system is to regulate pain. And to understand how opioids affect pain, we first need to understand how pain is processed. Pain is not just simply felt at the site of injury. It is interpreted by the nervous system. Let's say that you jam your finger. Specialized receptors, or specialized pain receptors called nociceptors in your finger, are activated and send signals through sensory neurons into the spinal cord and up to the brain. Once those signals reach the brain, they pass through a structure that you can see here called the thalamus, which acts as a relay station. From there, the signal is sent to the somatosensory cortex, which is located in the post-central gyrus of the parietal lobe, which is this ridge of cortex that you can see here at the front of the parietal lobe. But when the signal reaches the somatosensory cortex, this is when you become consciously aware of the pain. And this is happening in milliseconds, so it pretty much feels instantaneous. And at the same time, signals were also sent by the thalamus to deeper brain structures involved in emotion, including the amygdala. And this is why pain is not just physical. It also carries an emotional component, which is why sometimes when you feel pain, it can be associated with anger and some very interesting words to describe how you're feeling about that pain. But this pathway, signals traveling from the body up to the brain, is called the ascending pathway. But the nervous system doesn't stop there. After pain signals reach the brain can send signals back down the spinal cord to adjust how intense that pain feels. This is the descending pain pathway. Regions in the brainstem, particularly an area called the periaqueductal gray, activate circuits that release endogenous opioids in the spinal cord. These opioids reduce how strongly pain signals are transmitted up to the brain by the ascending pathway that we just learned about. Endogenous opioids can also be released locally at sites of tissue injury, in this case, your jammed finger. Now, it's important to note that these endogenous opioids don't eliminate pain entirely. Rather, they modulate it. They turn the volume of the pain down, so to speak. And this is a survival advantage. Opioid receptors exist because this modulation system is protective, so that in many cases, pain doesn't become overwhelming. But drugs like fentanyl take this normal pain control system and amplify it dramatically. And speaking of amplifying certain physiological systems, it's not really a secret that you can amplify your phosphocreatine energy system by supplementing with creatine, because we definitely know that creatine supplementation can increase your stores of phosphocreatine, and the data is clear that there are multiple benefits to creatine supplementation. So I guess the question is, where do you want to get your creatine from? Well, let me give you a suggestion on that by introducing you to Create. These guys created the first creatine monohydrate gummy, and they are made using the highest quality of Creapure creatine monohydrate, which has been third-party tested for quality. Plus, they taste great, as they come in multiple flavors like blue raspberry, sour green apple, and my personal new favorite, sour peach. One of my favorite things about these gummies is how convenient they are. No need to mix it in with a drink or shake, you can just pop a few of them into your oral cavity and chew them up, which I especially love when I go out of town or when I'm on the go. I no longer have to pack a whole bottle of creatine or transfer powder into a little Ziploc bag. And as I implied earlier, creatine is one of the most well-studied supplements, and I find very few reasons for people not to be supplementing with creatine. Because yes, it clearly helps improve exercise performance, but it can also improve cognitive function and even help with sleep deprivation. So if there's a high-quality creatine product like Create, I can definitely support that. So if you're interested, go to trycreate.co/humananatomy and use our code HUMANANATOMY to get 30% off. That link will also be in the description below. And now, let's get back to fentanyl. As we have already established, fentanyl binds to the opioid receptors, and there are several types of opioid receptors found throughout the body. But the most important one for our discussion is the Mu-Opioid receptor. Mu receptors are found in multiple locations, but their location explains many of the effects and side effects of opioids. You'll find Mu receptors in the spinal cord where pain signals are being transmitted. So fentanyl binding to these receptors will reduce the transmission of pain signals. Mu receptors are also found in certain regions of the brain involved in pain perception. So fentanyl binding to these receptors will reduce how pain is perceived. But these Mu receptors are also found in the digestive tract. And when fentanyl binds to these receptors, it slows gut motility, which explains why people on opioids can often have constipation. I actually had a pharmacology professor that would say, the one who forgets to prescribe a stool softener with the opioid will be the one to do the bowel disimpaction. If you haven't heard of a bowel disimpaction before, it's where you literally go in with a gloved finger and pull the hardened stool out of a patient's anus, which is not fun for either of the parties involved. But on a more serious note, Mu receptors are also located in the brain stem where breathing is controlled. And this leads us to our discussion on why fentanyl can be so dangerous. Fentanyl is extremely effective and potentially very dangerous because it binds very strongly to the Mu-Opioid receptors and activates them powerfully. It is also highly lipid soluble, which means it crosses the blood-brain barrier rapidly. It reaches the brain quickly and produces profound analgesia or profound pain relief at very small doses, often measured in micrograms in controlled medical settings. But here's the critical issue. As we just learned, those same Mu-Opioid receptors are also located in areas of the brainstem that regulate breathing. When it binds to those receptors involved in breathing, it suppresses respiratory drive. And because fentanyl is so potent, the difference between enough to relieve pain and enough to suppress breathing can be very small. In other words, once you get to the proper dose to suppress pain, it doesn't take much more of the drug to get to the point of suppressing breathing. This is what we call a narrow therapeutic window. Fentanyl not only has a narrow therapeutic window, it also acts quickly, which leaves little time to intervene in situations of overdose. In a hospital, doses are carefully calculated and patients are closely monitored. In illicit settings, there is a lack of precision. A slight variation in amount, purity, or tolerance can mean the difference between euphoria and fatal respiratory depression. So given how dangerous fentanyl can be, you might wonder why it exists at all. And the answer is that fentanyl does have legitimate medical uses. There are some people that go through extreme pain, such as advanced cancer pain and anesthesia during surgical procedures. And in those situations, it is carefully controlled, dosing is precise, monitoring is constant, and the drug is used for specific indications. The problem is not fentanyl itself. The problem is when fentanyl is used inappropriately and outside of those controlled environments. So we have now established that the most common cause of death in opioid overdose is respiratory depression. However, if overdose is caught early enough, a medication can be used to try to prevent the overdose from being fatal. And this medication is naloxone, also known as Narcan. This is an opioid antagonist. It binds to opioid receptors without activating them, displacing drugs like fentanyl. When administered during an overdose, it can restore breathing and save someone's life. However, because it abruptly removes opioids from the receptors, it often triggers acute withdrawal, especially in individuals that have built up a tolerance to opioids through frequent use. Withdrawal symptoms can include surges in anxiety, autonomic symptoms such as sweating and tachycardia, and increased pain sensitivity, to the point where even mild sensory input can feel overwhelming and even hurt. This is why opioid withdrawal is often described as one of the more severe withdrawal syndromes in medicine. Now, withdrawal is not simply the absence of pleasure. It is a physiological rebound, and this occurs because with repeated opioid use, the nervous system begins to adapt to the presence of the drug. Over time, the brain starts relying on the external opioid, and the body's own endogenous opioid signaling, things like endorphins, becomes reduced. At the same time, opioid receptors can become less responsive to stimulation. And because of these changes, a person will need higher and higher doses of the drug to produce the same effect. And this is what we mean when we say someone has developed a tolerance. And this concept is very important to understand. Someone who has used opioids for a long period of time may build up a tolerance to the point where the dose they are taking does not cause respiratory depression for them. However, if an opioid-naive person were to take that same amount of the drug, that dose could easily be fatal. This is also why relapse after a period of abstinence can be so dangerous. Some individuals may stop using opioids for a period of time, sometimes through rehab or detox, but during that time, their tolerance decreases and starts to go back to normal. So if later on they were to relapse and take the same high dose they previously used, their body may no longer be able to tolerate that amount, and tragically, this is a common way fatal overdoses occur. Now, tolerance is technically not the same thing as addiction, but the two often go hand in hand. Addiction occurs when changes in the brain's reward and motivation systems drive a person to continue using a drug even when it is clearly causing harm. At that point, the drug is no longer just producing relief or pleasure, it begins to strongly influence behavior. So when you step back and look at the anatomy and physiology, fentanyl's power and its danger starts to make a lot more sense. The same receptor system that allows clinicians to relieve severe pain is the same system that, when overstimulated, can shut down breathing. And that's what makes fentanyl and other opioids both incredibly useful in medicine and incredibly dangerous when it's used outside of controlled environments.